Welcome to The Friday Habit with Mark Labriola and Benjamin Manley. The Friday Habit is for small business owners, freelancers, and creatives who are ready to take their business to the next level. Join us as we discover how to apply the strategies we learned to grow our businesses, make more money, and live every day like it's Friday. Welcome to the Friday Habit. Another Friday of practicing your habits.
Good habits, hopefully. Yeah.
How you doing, Ben?
I'm good. We're actually recording on a Friday this time, so
I know, which is so crazy and cool.
Yeah. I mean, we always record on Friday. I forgot about.
Yeah. Well, hey, it's our pleasure because today we have Susanne Mariga. And she is a CPA and financial CFO specializing in high net worth strategies for 7- and 8-figure entrepreneurs using the Profit First system. So we are big fans of the Profit First system. And as a certified Profit First professional, or as a PFP as they call them, at the mastery level, she is passionate about helping entrepreneurs maximize their revenue, grow their business, and save dollars through sound tax strategies. So this is all stuff that I love and that our audience is going to just gobble up because we are all looking on ways that we can maximize our revenue and grow our business and save dollars through sound tax strategies. So, Susanne, welcome to the Friday Habit.
Well, Mark and Ben, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here today.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're super excited to have you.
Yeah, so let's see. I'm trying to think, Ben. I read Profit First maybe back in 20. I don't know when did it come out?
Oh man, I don't remember exactly.
I want to say I read it back in 2015, maybe 2016.
It feels like it was about 5 years ago that I started following the system, but I don't really remember it.
Do you know, Susanne, when that book came out?
It's been a couple of editions, right? It looks like, Ben, you probably read the blue edition when I had the actual original piggy bank on the book. But
yes.
I want to say 2014 and then 2017, maybe a relaunch of the book.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. So that's when I read it. And it was one of those things where everything that was being said in that book resonated with me so much and made so much sense to me. It was very logical as how it was laid out. And then it was interesting because then as I tried to talk to my CPA and other tax advisors, they're like, "Ma'am, I don't know anything about this." And, that's just not how we do things. It's like, what is all these bank accounts? It's too much confusion, And I was like, yeah, but I think there's something good here, And so I kind of went rogue and just did my own thing and implemented the Profit First system. And I have never gone a quarter without making profit, and being able to, distribute money into savings and for the business account and for personally. So I think it's a great system. And I think, Ben, you kind of built your business kind of on the same thing, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's been awesome. I mean, we can get more into, I'd love to maybe Susanne, you can help walk our listeners through it as well. Cause a few of them probably are aware of it, but a lot of them probably aren't. So maybe we can walk through that at some point today. But yeah, that system has honestly just decreased so much stress for me and also allowed me to hand over my business to be run by someone else and have them running things and them have a good system to follow as well. It's very stress-free. So all of that has just made taking vacations, honestly, less stressful because even things like having that quarterly bonus, it's just okay, cool. This is going to be awesome for vacation money or something like that. So we can get more into it, but yeah, I would definitely say that has been a huge determining factor on the success of my business.
Yeah, it's been definitely a life changer for many businesses with that. It changed my entire business too with using Profit First. And I can go in a little bit as to what it is for your audience.
Yeah, I would love that. I mean, but first, I think I would love to hear a little bit about who you are, how you got into finance. Were you a kid, someday I want to crunch numbers for a living? What's your story?
I don't think any of us actually end up where we thought we were at 5, right?
Yeah. Right.
I actually started working for my dad when I was 14. He was a CPA. He had a CPA firm in Cincinnati, Ohio. And he brought me in to help with his clients' bookkeeping and do some very, very light taxes. So, I was always like that, what do you call the child write-off, right? You see those, you go into those restaurants and you see like the children at the register. I was that child, that was answering the phone saying, hi, this is Mr. Chan's office, the one that was cranking the books and things like that. And it was a great experience because, they say it takes about 10 years to become an expert at something or a master at something. And I always joke, I said, when I was getting out of college, I was already a master, when my colleagues were getting started with things. But, it's a great tax write-off, for those of you guys who are able to employ your children. And it's a great life experience too, right? Because you're giving them that gift of apprenticeship. And although I looked down at my dad, I was like, oh, I'll never be an accountant. Look at me today and where I ended up at.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So then did you go right out of school? Did you go to continue to work for your dad? Did you go work for another firm? Did you start your own thing? Like, what was that journey like?
So it was interesting because when I went to school, I thought I was going to go to medical school. I thought I was going to be a doctor, and I was taking pre-med classes until I decided to take a phlebotomy class because I was that kid that was going to be a great doctor, but never volunteered at a hospital, never did any type of medical and health practice work. So
never had to see blood or bodily fluids everywhere.
Exactly. And oh my gosh, after a whole quarter of drawing blood and, watching needles go in one vein and out the skin on the other side, I said, you know what, I might not be very good at this, or not putting the tube on to the catheter fast enough and watching blood shoot up. I was like, I think accounting sounds more attractive.
I've had enough of this fast life. I'm ready for accounting.
Definitely people don't die in accounting.
Yeah, that's my wife is a nurse, and she, she's not currently practicing, but it's just funny how she's she worked with me here at my company Knapsack for a while, and she's like, the good thing is no matter when there's any type of emergency, no one's gonna die. Their website might be down for a few minutes, but no one's dying, so it's actually not that bad.
Definitely helps that way with that.
Yeah. So then you decided to go into accounting, and then how did that work? Did you, like I said, did you work for yourself or did you work for your dad, or did you go join a big firm?
So actually, I went to work for Arthur Andersen in Chicago.
Okay.
And,
big time.
it was interesting because my dad was like, so you going to come work for me? And I said, oh no, I'm going to be a partner at Andersen. And I think most of you guys probably know how Andersen ended up. I went to the Chicago office at Arthur Andersen. And, our friendly folks here down in Houston kind of had some interesting things that happened with Enron. So we had those Let It Snow commercials of shredding paper and things like that for a while, for any of you guys that are old enough to remember that. But, I wasn't involved with the Enron case, but it did cost me my job, right? Because literally Arthur Andersen, which was the number one firm at the time, does not exist because of the Enron case.
Wow.
I later on went to KPMG right afterwards. And, and then I went to work for a publicly traded company, an insurance company, right after that. And, it was interesting because I ended up starting my business because, actually I had no intention of starting a business, but I was literally flying every week from Houston to Toronto because I was in charge of the Canadian operations at the time. And I was about 6 months pregnant, and you're not supposed to travel your third trimester. And I was like, well, I kind of don't look pregnant. Nobody asked me how pregnant I was. And so I was here by flying, and it was at the point that I couldn't even fit in the seat anymore because I was always on those jets where, they have the one side where there's one person that sits, and then they have the two seats on the other side. Well, I couldn't even put the bar down, that my belly was so big and I was traveling.
Oh man.
And it hit me. I said, oh my gosh, my life is about to change. I'm about to have this little girl. I'm not going to be able to travel every single week unless she's raised by a nanny. And I'm like, literally, they didn't even have FaceTime back then. So
Right.
she would be talking to me over a dial-up phone. And I was like, my life is about to change. What am I going to do? And so during my maternity leave, I kept spending and spending, and I was going to all these daycares, interviewing the perfect place for my daughter. And I was like, you know what? The perfect place is with her mom. And so literally 2 weeks before I went back, I put in my 2 weeks notice, said, you know what? This is a great place to transition. Haven't been here for a couple months now anyway. And I think I'm going to do my own thing. And so we've been on our own ever since. We're a Goldman Sachs 10,000, where we're Profit First Firm of the Year for 2021. We were featured in many magazines. I'm an author now of a book that Mike Michalowicz and I actually wrote together, Profit First for Minority Business Enterprises, which if you're not a minority, it's still a great book. People tell me the tax section is amazing. We've been rolling ever since.
Nice. That's awesome. So I love this because it's that story of, you taking that risk on yourself and then seeing the success that came from it. I think a lot of people, are nervous to make that jump. They have a decision like that in their lives about like what would be best for their family or whatever that might look like. But then they're always just worried about like how the logistics, like, well, how's it going to work out? Like, how am I going to, be able to get clients, or how am I going to do X, Y, and Z? And sometimes, there's benefit to not overthinking things and like just doing what you feel is right and taking that leap of faith, and then, just getting to work, and things will kind of reveal themselves as you move forward, and they'll like work out. And so here you are working things out.
Absolutely. And I agree with you, Mark. I mean, those first client meetings, I literally brought my daughter, and I got to a point that I was hoping that she would not throw French fries at the table because that's just the kind of girl she was. Sweet, but she gets bored pretty easy. And that's where we started. I could not afford daycare when we started. And by the time I had my second one, a nanny was raising him. So it really is about just getting started, doing your best, and super serving every client. The best advice I got was, get a good pair of shoes because you're going to knock on a lot of doors.
Yeah, totally.
Man, that must have been quite a transition because you were working at pretty big firms before that. Like, what were the things you were scared of in making that change? Was there any things you were like, you feel like maybe there's a blind spot in your knowledge? Or did you feel scared that people would think you were a failure if it didn't work out? Or like, what were some of the things going through your head when you decided to do that?
So when I started my firm, I was heavily focused on the ramp up, and so constantly focusing on growth, and so I didn't look around with being afraid, because I was a new mom, so there wasn't really the pressure. I think the biggest challenge was just not having childcare, it was mommy problems, trying to find who's in campus that might need a job that they can watch my daughter when I go to important meetings. But that was probably the biggest challenge because, I think, from working with the big firms, I was able to leverage the skills that I learned there as well as some of the relationships, because early on we got some pretty big government contracts early on. And so we were growing, contract with our Houston Public School District, our City of Houston, Chicago Public Schools. We were growing those kind of contracts at the same time we were growing our small business practice. So it really was about just doing your best one client at a time and not focusing on where things can go wrong, but just focus on, how do I grow this efficiently? How do I super serve my clients? How do I implement the best technology in order to keep my expenses down?
Wow. Are you still practicing in that firm? Is that still going now, or have you moved on from there as well?
So the firm exists in a different way. Now I do the fractional CFO work. We actually sold the traditional accounting tax practice in November. So I always tell people, entrepreneurs, you're building an asset that can sell. Right. So technically I was able to retire at the age of 46 years old. I mean, can you imagine retiring at 46 and being able to do exactly what you love doing? And so now the traditional accounting and tax practice, if you're looking for bookkeeping services, Susanne, don't do that anymore. It's been sold. But I do the fractional CFO work. So now I go into a bit larger companies and I create those systems that allow them to scale to become that
You get to do
multi-million-dollar
the fun
business.
stuff, you know? It's like now you just get to do the stuff that you enjoy, right?
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
It's fun stuff. But building an asset all along. And that's where that profit first becomes really important, because when your buyers are looking to buy a business, so many people go, oh, I'm focused on the revenue. It's not just the revenue, right? It's the profit too, right? It's that EBITDA, that earnings before income taxes and depreciation, amortization. So profit is important because that's going to be the multiple that's going to allow you to retire with that asset when you sell it.
At what point did you kind of come across Profit First or Mike? And, how did that connection happen? And were you at first like, Profit First, like, what's this? Like, is this really going to work with like real, typical business strategy and accounting practices? What was your first impression and how did that relationship start?
So, it actually started, I have to be honest, I was a little bit selfish. When I read Profit First, a friend had recommended it for me. And Mike swears that I was one of the early founders. I mean, there were people in the room. There wasn't as many people as there are now, maybe 20 when I started, but he swears I was one of the first people that were in the room. And I read that book because I ran a business like everybody else runs a business, right? We do what we love. We want to make the impact in the world, right? We want to make sales, right? Because they always say sell, 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 get up to 7 figures. And profit was the last thing that I was thinking about, because I said, it's all about volume. That was my model. It was a volume-based model. Oh, yeah, we can do your books for $200 a month, right? Yeah, we can see how low we can get this tax return. You want to haggle about prices? How much is that person charging you down the street? And let me see if I can knock $100 off, right? And the reality is, when you're racing against the prices, right? So when I'm looking at my price versus what Mark or Ben is going to charge, right? The winner is free. It's whoever can get free is going to get the client, right? That's the winner. And especially if you do government contracting, right? It's a race towards the bottom. They're looking for the best value, which happens to be the lowest cost provider, right? And as a result of working for free, I realized that, this is not going to get me where I want, right? This was excessive hours. It was, okay, who's the cheapest person I can afford to hire versus the best person, right? Because when you've got low margins, you can't afford to hire the best. The only person that's going to work for free is you, right? The owner.
Right.
And it was actually so much that, I remember doing a tax return for a friend, and it was a Saturday morning, and I was tired because this was like April 15th. This is like the end of the line. And I remember standing up, and suddenly my back went snap, just like that. And by the way, I was doing her return for free. Okay. And I always say your body's going to give up on you before, you're mentally going to be exhausted. And my body literally gave up for me. And that's what made me look and just start talking to my community. Things have got to change. I've got all these people working for me, and we're just not performing, or they're not performing. And someone said, you got to read this book, Profit First. And I'm telling you, I bought that book on audio. I bought that book on paper. I bought it on Kindle because I had to read it everywhere. Planes, trains, automobiles. I had to read this book everywhere. And it was the biggest change because, I knew it was going to work. And I think maybe that's the difference with being an accountant is it's physics. If I have all these bank accounts and I know how much I'm getting every month and I'm putting money aside to profit first, meaning my profit first bank account is getting funded first. My owner's pay bank account is getting funded first. And then the last bank account that's going to get funded are my operating expenses. Then physics, law of movement, the law of just moving money, it's going to work. So I knew it was going to absolutely work. And it was a major game changer because it allowed me to create a business that I could sell. It allowed me to become the first millionaire in my family. And now I can, I've seen it worked on hundreds of other clients too. So it absolutely works. Do not pass on this system. And it's an amazing system. It will change your life.
All right, we're going to pause this conversation here. Go to thefridayhabit.com. There you can find show notes for this episode. There you can also find links to our websites and ways to get in touch. At the bottom of the page, you can download our guide to the Friday Habit System that will show you how to set aside one full day each week dedicated to working on your business instead of in your business. If you're not already, make sure you subscribe. If you enjoyed this episode and want to hear next week's episode, subscribe so you get notified. Also, leave us a review in Apple Podcast app or wherever you listen to your podcasts. And if you want to potentially be on one of our episodes with a question you ask us, go ahead and record a quick message in your phone, voice memo, and email it to hello@thefridayhabit.com. Until next time, live every day like it's Friday.